Let's tell you more about voting of additional members officially getting underway at the second leg of the ANC Gauteng's 14th provincial conference that's taking place in Boksburg. The conference concluded proceedings late last night with delegates discussing commissions which need to be agreed upon before heading to the mother body's policy conference later this month. Mbali Thethani is standing by to be in conversation with Mduduzi Manana. It's over to you, Mbali. Good afternoon.
Certainly, Dudu, you are indeed right. Of course, voting of those additional members is still currently underway here at the Birchwood Hotel in Boksburg. And as you can see, that there are still long queues coming out from the voting hall. And we do understand that voting started at around 10 o'clock this morning. And we understand that the leagues started voting. And of course, also some of the previous senior members and those who formed part of the PEC. And of course, you would know that as voting gets underway, to do that this province will need to at least vote in 40 additional members who will then form part of the PEC. But just to give us a bit more insight when it comes to this conference, you would know that we saw a number of delays, and some of those delays is the issue around Ekurhuleni coming back to haunt this conference. So just to give us a bit more insight in terms of what happened last night when the steering committee met, Mduduzi Manana was one of the officials who was actually sitting in that meeting. Mduduzi, as the steering committee, as the chairperson of the NDRC of the ANC, you sat in that meeting last night trying to iron out some of the issues still haunting this conference, being the issue around those quarantine votes from the Ekurhuleni region. And of course, as the committee, you have now decided that those votes will not be reopened.
Indeed, the steering committee met yesterday after conference directed that we resolve the issue of the quarantined votes. And the steering committee came to a determination that the vote should not be opened because those branches would have been disqualified by the verification process. So it clearly means that those branches were not supposed to be at conference. And the PEC, after our deliberations in the NEC, that they should rather deal with the Ekurhuleni matter because it was, after all, a regional conference. So the PEC was more competent to deal with it. So they deferred the matter to the incoming PEC to resolve. And conference felt that no, they don't want the incoming PEC to deal with the matter. They want the matter to be resolved at conference because they do have those powers and functions to rescind or to review PEC decisions. But we had to remind conference that there is a national verification process that had happened. That of course, when we audit our branches, and that is done by national. So no provincial structure, no provincial conference can actually review a national verification process. So after deliberations in the steering committee, we presented our case as the NEC and as the steering committee that voting should proceed, and that of course these branches are not supposed to be at conference. So they will not be voting for additional members. Those quarantine votes will not be opened because they were disqualified by the verification, by the final verification report, which was signed off by the Treasurer General, who's acting Secretary General.
Because this is something that came from the floor in the main plenary hall, what has been the response, by the delegates to the decision that has been taken?
I think the decision was welcomed by conference. A group from Ekurhuleni still wanted to understand what the decision means. Comrade Pemi Majotina and myself met the comrades, and we said this has nothing to do with the Ekurhuleni conference, which is still unresolved. The PEC, the incoming PEC, will be looking at those problems of Ekurhuleni, and at a given point when they want national to assist in terms of how the verification process would have happened. National will obviously interact with the PEC. From the side of the NDRC, we will also give our reports on how we dealt with the disputes and the appeals, so that we empower the PEC in order for them to then make a sound determination around Ekurhuleni Regional Conference, whether it stands or it should rerun.
Just coming into this conference, you've been dealing with a number of disputes, especially facing this conference, which finds itself in a second leg now. How difficult was it to maneuver around these disputes raised with your office to finally see this province finally voting in those additional members?
Well, it was quite a tedious process, but I must thank the team, the members of the NDRC, who worked beyond the call of duty to ensure that we resolve every dispute and every appeal that came to us. But I can tell you it was not easy. We spent sleepless nights trying to really satisfy all the aggrieved parties, all aggrieved members who would have had or would have registered disputes or lodged disputes with us, some disputes were key, some were obviously frivolous, and the National Dispute Resolution Committee applied its mind in arriving at verdicts that were more organizational, and that we're really trying to bring the organization together, harmonize relations amongst those comrades who are at discord with one another. And really, because the aim and the very mechanism of dispute resolution is to try and unify the organization so that we minimize, cases of, branch feuds and transgressions that happen at branch level, being taken to court and all of that. So I think we've done fairly well. Some comrades are not happy with our verdicts, but we had to arrive at those verdicts for the sake of the organization and for the sake of unity and renewal.
Thank you very much. Of course, that is Mduduzi Manana. He is an NEC member, but also is the chairperson of the ANC's National Dispute Resolution Committee, saying there that for this conference to go ahead, they've had to deal with a number of disputes, and of course the very crucial issue they had to deal with was of course the Ekurhuleni quarantined votes, and of course saying that those votes will not be reopened. And this is a decision being taken by the steering committee, which met last night to see a finality in this conference, which is now extended to at least 4 or 5 days to do.
Mbali Thethani in Boksburg for us. Thank you very much. We'll continue to touch base with you throughout the course of the afternoon.